The cultural entity of Latin America is the place to understand British informal empire in the 19th century. This heritage is distinct from settler and administrative colonialism in the region by Spain and Portugal from 1525 to 1870. Latin America was hugely important to the late 19th century British economy, and these informal empire connections were complex, creating and encouraging not just commercial, but also literary and political influence, and the spread of the English game of football across the continent. In 1909, the Everton football team from Liverpool on Merseyside arrived with Tottenham Hotspur, a team from North London, to play a series of showcase matches in Argentina and Uruguay. News of the Everton club's creative and dynamic play quickly spread across the Andes Mountains and reached the bustling Chilean port of Valparaiso, where the merchant Foxley family founded a new football club and called it Everton. And so began a unique association between two clubs bearing that same name, separated by 8,000 miles of Atlantic Ocean and Andean mountains. In collaboration with John Sheeran, founder of the 𝗪𝗺𝗃 Society, which celebrates links between these two Evertons, and Professor Michel Prain at the Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez in Valparaiso, this participatory interactive documentary charts the social and ethnographic history of Chile and the spread of the beautiful game by migrant communities across Latin America, thus empowering diverse audiences to upload their own stories, personal reflections and media, to build a unique living resource of shared football experiences, local history, and enhanced cultural understanding. In 1954, the French soccer journalist Jeannette Konietzski wrote an essay celebrating the universality of the game of soccer, or football as it's known here in Europe, describing it as a world language whose grammar is unchanging from the North Pole to the equator. This prescient article is recalled in Laurent Dubois' The Language of the Game, in which he suggests football is probably the most universal language on the planet, spoken more widely than English, Arabic or Chinese, and practiced more widely than any religion. Perhaps most memorably, the Swedish writer Fredrik Ekelund refers to football as Esperanto of the feet. The late Argentinian legend Diego Maradona, arguably the greatest footballer that's ever lived, famously stated, "Football isn't a game nor a sport, it's a religion." Viewed in this way, Benedict Anderson's theory of imagined communities, suggesting nationalism is more about cultural construct, means we can understand football allegiances within national, and significantly for this interactive documentary project, within migrant communities, as a deep horizontal comradeship, which culturally resonates more profoundly than supporting a chosen team linked to ethnic identity. Football fans will tell you, go anywhere in the world, and with no relationship or other formal association, and sometimes no way of clearly communicating, say the word Messi, mention Barcelona or Real Madrid, or the English Premier League's top clubs, and in an instant there's a glint of understanding, signifying the mutual appreciation, the bond that football fans have for and with each other. In this way, it is a universal language with which individuals communicate an understanding of shared lived experiences, of shared emotions, the highs and lows, that can transcend national languages and regional dialects, cultural differences, and political boundaries and allegiances. Such is the globalization of the game and the instant dialogue of social media that fan connections are now achieved on a scale never imagined possible even less than 30 years ago. And with the belated acceptance of women's football at all levels of the game now, it can be argued the sport has now achieved a community affinity and identity which extends across different global societies more profoundly than ever before. This is football's magical superpower, the layer upon layer of shared experience that people from disparate backgrounds enjoy as part of the football community. This is true of the professional global game, but also at grassroots community level, where football brings camaraderie, friendships, and shared understanding. A 2015 study of the refugee population in Sweden, for instance, concluded that encouraging young boys from that community to play football was an important factor in helping them learn the Swedish language and achieving the social integration of these youngsters, as it gave them friends and a sense of belonging. Notwithstanding that during the duration of this particular study, cultural integration was limited, it's tempting to conclude that this would be more of a generational process to which football allegiances might usefully contribute. So clearly, football fosters community entanglements in varied, important and life-enhancing ways. It is therefore a vivid and engaging portal through which social history and cultural aspects of identity, nationalism, citizenship and community can be explored. Focusing on the late 19th century industrialization of Latin America, this interactive participatory documentary project aims to document and encourage these connections through the eyes and the voices of local people reflecting upon their own history and lived experience. Thus, the documentary will decolonize the lens, featuring community-generated content to augment media content researched and produced by the research project, bringing together a variety of media, old and new. This material will include video portraits, original visual and audio recordings, photography, drone footage, original soundscaping, and data visualization, including mapping, together with found footage and other archive material. These resources will be interwoven into a compelling historical narrative designed to bring to life the stories of migrant communities and broader national history. This includes histories of the native populations, of Indigenous massacre and displacement, and how British immigration and informal empire connects to these events to engage with global and hard-to-reach audiences. Inspired by Latin America's tradition of magical realism, the documentary platform will incorporate XR content and feature narration from different historical perspectives, including those of the Indigenous Mapuche Indians, early mining communities, railway labourers, wealthy European merchants, and Everton's inspiring football tour of the continent in 1909. The landing page is a topographical map of the continent, identifying international boundaries and club locations. Users can select which country to explore, tracing the railway lines along which so many of these clubs were located as new communities were established. The project is focusing particularly on the nation of Chile, the ribbon-like country stretching down the coast of South America, bordered by the Andes Mountains to the east, and the South Pacific Ocean just some 60 miles to the west. The country's top-flight professional football league includes 4 clubs established and supported by migrant populations, and they're listed here, including Everton de Viña del Mar. But in fact, during the early years of industrialization, there were numerous recorded clubs called Everton across Latin America. Everton de Viña del Mar is one of 6 Evertons that still exist. Some remain as football clubs, others are more general sports clubs. But all are integral to the local community. For instance, one incorporates the local library. Chile's Everton is by far the most successful. Everton de Viña del Mar has won the National League 4 times. But the familiar name is no coincidence, because all these clubs have a direct connection to Everton FC in Liverpool 4, which was founded in 1878, just a few years before the first Latin American team bearing the same name. No other club has such a storied link to the continent. The formation of these Evertons, as well as other clubs founded by immigrant populations, is rooted in the industrialization of Latin America in the late 1800s and early 1900s. They reflect the arrival of thousands of British merchants and entrepreneurs associated with banking, mining industries, utility companies, and railway construction and maintenance, employing tens of thousands of railway engineers and labourers many of whom migrated from Liverpool on Merseyside to help establish the first rail networks serving mercantile exports throughout Chile, Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay. Whilst the main emphasis is on Chile and Everton de Viña del Mar, the project will feature these other Everton clubs through which migrant communities celebrated their identity, such as the Italian gringos in Coronel Maltese, British railway workers in Cruz Alta, Canada de Gomez, and various communities in La Plata in Argentina and Rosario in Uruguay. At this point, it's very important to acknowledge the work and collaboration of John Sheeran and the 𝗪𝗺𝗃 Society he founded in 2002, without which this project would not have been conceived. The 𝗪𝗺𝗃 Society celebrates these Latin American Evertons and encourages social interaction, practical and financial support between these clubs and their namesake on Merseyside, and especially with Everton de Viña del Mar in Chile. In 19th century Chile, Valparaiso was a major hub of global trade and shipping, with a British immigrant population of around 32,000, as well as many other European migrants. It became the cradle of football in the country. The game was quickly adopted by other migrant and local populations. This is documented in the Anglophone Chile project, a newspaper archive translated and curated by Professor Michelle Prain, Faculty of Liberal Arts at the Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez in Valparaiso, who is the other main contributor on the project. It is a rich and detailed archive documenting the origins of football in Chile. World War I marked the end of British domination of both sport and commercial activities on the continent. Many migrants returned home to fight, never to return. The Anglophone Chile project has recently been awarded a 20-month grant from the British Library's Endangered Archive programme. It's intended that the collaborations on this interactive documentary will result in enhancements to cultural heritage preservation, the interpretation of unexplored primary source materials, and the co-production on new cultural artefacts. Using football clubs as a portal to understand the socio-economic history of Chile and Latin America represents an innovative approach grounded in the community bonds of football as a common language and shared experience, using the co-creators' love of football as the stepping-off point to explore social histories and examining questions of community and national identity. In the second stage of the project, different migrant populations based in the capital Santiago who identify with specific football clubs established during the period will also feature. Deportivo Palestinos, Audax Italiano and Union Española all currently play in the country's Premier League alongside Everton de Viña del Mar. The project will explore the history and experiences of these migrant European populations from Spain and Italy, as well as the Palestinian population who founded Club Deportivo Palestinos in 1920. This community suffered terrible persecution at home and in Latin America before crossing the Andes into Chile in the 1850s. A key rationale for the choice of interactive platform is the opportunity for in-depth, inclusive storytelling. Alongside the narratives of these varied migrant communities linked to the Pacific trading routes, the stories of the native populations can be properly acknowledged as well. The Mapuche today comprise around 1.3 million people, some 84% of Chile's indigenous populations. These communities lost most of their ancestral lands, suffering massacre and displacement to Indian reservations during the first half of the 20th century, which were then subject to division and expropriation by powerful landowners as industrialization proceeded. Historically devoted to agriculture, the majority of Mapuche are now urbanized. This rural-urban migration started in the 1930s, largely due to the scarcity of land. It's important to document and disseminate these indigenous stories, which can so often be overlooked, and a web-based interactive documentary allows for these narratives to be explored in detail. At local level, The project will foster greater links and understanding between the UK and Chilean communities. This will be achieved by offering the project for exhibition, initially at the Museum of Liverpool, the National Football Museum in Manchester, and Museo Marítimo Nacional in Valparaiso. The impact of this distribution will be gauged by audience viewing and participation, including feedback questionnaires and invitations to visit the online interactive site, where they can submit their own media material as active co-creators. This emerging form of documentary research-based practice has yet to attain its distinctive shape and attendant expectations, yet nevertheless provides a stimulating and creative arena for both content producers and academic scholars. The interactivity of the documentary means it's uniquely placed to document the stories of these communities through their football allegiances, the identities which Anderson describes, especially as it can be designed to encourage the participation of the audience. The control given to the user as they chart their own path through the narrative is empowering. Watson suggests the conscious act of physically plotting one's own course through an interactive web-based documentary actually highlights the emotional attachment. In the context of football, it's anticipated this will tap into the football and club team, national team allegiances of fans as they encounter stories, contributors, and contextual information about the teams they support, which will expose them to and encourage them to explore broader social history as a result. 𝗵𝗺𝗵𝗁 argues that offering agency to the user in the participative mode creates a series of relationships that form an ecosystem in which all parts are interdependent and dynamically linked, arguing that interactive documentaries are ways to experience the real rather than to represent it. So in conclusion, this documentary is designed to be a celebration of football connections across the world, and in particular of Everton FC on Merseyside and its Latin American namesakes. This unique Everton link provides a particularly profound common language and understanding upon which to base larger, wider conversations and lived experience. These links offer the opportunity to explore beyond a common interest in football, examining the ethnographic history of different communities linked to 19th century industrialization, both those indigenous to the region and of migrants from different parts of the world, including European nations and the Middle East, celebrating our differences, but also learning about and appreciating what we have in common. The benefits of this enhanced cultural understanding of issues, phenomena, with the potential to shape or inform public attitudes and values, also offers the chance to contribute to processes of commemoration, memorialization, and reconciliation. Whilst the proliferation of football clubs named Everton is unique to Latin America, this project is a case study exploring the social and cultural history of migrant and indigenous communities through the lens of football, the basis of which can be applied to other sports and other regions. Whilst the project has storytelling at its core, its hoped research-led engagement with under-engaged, diverse and hard-to-reach audiences will lead to increased cultural participation, develop stimuli to cultural tourism, and enhance the quality of life of participants. It's envisaged that the online site will encourage understanding and empathy, awareness of local issues, cultural and social history, and inspire conversation, building more inclusive local, national, and transnational communities. Thank you.